Presenting Volunteers First, Part 2 this evening will be Peggy Shippen. And she's a member of the Leadership Development Committee and author of this series. And she'll be assisted by members of other branches who have helped in the development of this series. Also joining us in the presentation is Barry Altland. Hi, Barry. You might remember him. He's the author of the book Head, Heart, and Hands of a Volunteer and a consultant to AAUW California, and also a developer of last year's leadership series, Touching the Hearts of Our Volunteers. We welcome all of you to tonight's session and want to extend a special welcome to our guests from AAUW Oregon and AAUW Washington, who are joining us tonight. Several of their members assisted Peggy in preparing this series. Okay, Peggy, take it away.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for being with us tonight and for joining us for the second session of Volunteers First. I want to, as usual, get started by giving credits to the four people who have made this really possible for me. And one is just quickly Cheryl Blakely, former president of AAUW Palm Springs branch, who inspired the program many years ago. Barry Altland, an author and consultant with AAUW California, who enlightened our understanding of the why and the how of volunteer leadership, the importance of engaging the head, heart, and hand of volunteers, and consented to our using his book for this program. Sigmund Morans, of course, our AAUW branch leadership development chair, who is endlessly patient and never allowed me to give up, and to Gloria Holland, Salem branch member, for her invaluable narrative coaching. As you all know, Volunteers First is an awareness program. It's designed specifically for leaders of volunteers to address AAUW's declining membership, engagement, and leaderships. We seek Volunteers First seeks serious consideration of AAUW leaders to change their primary focus from administering the branch, filling positions, and assigning tasks to members to first building and facilitating relationships among members, hence the name, the title, Volunteers First. There are four effective interchangeable best practices or ways for leaders and members to build and facilitate relationships. They are care, connect, support, and recognize. Success implementing each depends on AAUW leaders knowing and respecting what each member volunteers hopes to gain or get in return for being an AAUW member while working for the cause. So with that in mind, I think it's important to just take a few minutes here now to refresh our memories about the Volunteers First basics that we covered in the first session. In the first session, we learned we're not alone. Nonprofit volunteer organizations worldwide have been facing a steady decline in members and volunteers for over 20 years. But we did the best we could, as did they. They adopted, and so did we, the business leadership model. Need to have somebody mute their microphone, please. They adopted the business leadership model for recruitment, retention, productive engagement, and leadership. It was familiar and it made sense at the time. AAUW had some excellent success in some of the areas using this business leadership model, because for these areas it is appropriate. Accountability to donors and members is good, and we used it effectively when developing an array of engaging community programs that have measurably advanced and empowered women and girls throughout the country. But with all of this success, we can't figure out why membership is declining. It's puzzling because our cause is one of such great passion to so many women. And try as we may, we have not been able to get ourselves out of this pickle. We learned in our last session that research has always been the basis for our external AAUW programs. So, in 2022, Sandy Gabe, former AAUW of California president, and her board, they made a bold decision to research our dilemma internally. Former AAUW California members were surveyed and asked why they dropped their branch membership. Particular attention was given to answers of those who had been leaders and or actively engaged. Other than moving or illness, a significant number said they left AAUW because they felt unwelcome, disconnected, and or just became disinterested in participating, even for the cause. That's when we were challenged. After reading Barry Outland's book, Engaging the Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers, and meeting with him by Zoom, we began to understand why we were losing members and how to make an effective leadership correction. Barry had us look inward for our volunteer motivators. And interestingly enough, they were the same or almost the same as the ones here on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once done, Barry suggested our collective intrinsic motivators were likely the same motivators as those of most of our members. He then suggested all AAUW leaders needed to do was focus on satisfying those intrinsic needs, those motivators, what members want to gain from volunteering with us, and then just modify our leadership model accordingly. So we looked around to see if there was any research that might validate and support what Barry's theory is. The first was done in 2020 by South American volunteers. They asked other volunteers all over the world, what keeps you coming back? And the results were astounding. Universally, the volunteers said they do so to satisfy their intrinsic needs, the needs that money can't buy or jobs can't satisfy. The need to altruize, to socialize, to learn, to self-actualize. These are the categories. The conclusion was simple. Leaders of volunteers can sustain their organizations if they first and foremost focus on the intrinsic needs of volunteers. The administrative needs of the branch, being secondary, will be easier and happen more naturally if they do this. In summary, what we learned in the first session is volunteerism is an affair of the heart. If leaders here tonight learn nothing else from these sessions, remember this: fulfilling the members' intrinsic motivations for volunteering is what touches their heart. Fulfillment drives their choices for volunteering, and fulfillment or joy is what sustains an AAUW member's passion for serving. The heart you see here represents this newfound awareness. This revelation gave us pause. In the process of trying to empower and advocate for equity for other women, have we, the AAUW mother leaders, been treating our members more like employees and unintentionally neglecting to nurture them properly as volunteers? To sustain our AAUW mother tree, the research suggests we need to ensure our member volunteers' intrinsic needs, the needs that money or work cannot provide, the needs they unconsciously hope to gain as an AAUW member, are nurtured first. In 2023, Australians also studied volunteerism on a worldwide basis to determine the most effective leadership practices for leader volunteers, practices that would increase volunteer engagement, retention, and leadership. The results of the volunteer study were: successful leaders of volunteers made building and facilitating relationships their number one priority. And the Australians further listed the most effective ways to build and facilitate relationships are to care, connect, support, and recognize. While we've been going through them in detail in session 1 and now session 2, as if they're steps, they are in fact interconnected. So very briefly on care, because we covered this in session 1 in great detail. The first way to build and facilitate relationships is to show you genuinely care about each member as a person. In the first session, we discussed care in detail. Generally, care means personally getting to know each member, talking in person and learning what motivates each member to volunteer, what interests and motivated and activities each member brings each member satisfaction and joy. Learn by asking what each member hopes to gain intrinsically by being an AAUW member and engaging for our cause. Also in the first session, we discussed the second way to build and facilitate relationships, which is to connect with each other, basically, each member personally, then personally connect each member to other members and activities that match their intrinsic needs and interests. Assigning administrative or job tasks to members does not build relationship, nor does it serve the purpose of putting the wants and needs of our member volunteers first. And at this stage, it certainly might not bring them joy. So tonight we're going to talk about support and recognition. We'll talk about support now. We'll talk how research shows successful leaders of volunteers use support to build and facilitate relationships among members. Of all the behaviors found in the Australian study, I personally think support will make the biggest difference in sustaining engagement and leadership development. We've already discussed care, but if you remember, the 4 leadership behaviors are interconnected. So, if you haven't already done so, at the stage where you're about to support someone who's engaging, now is the time to discover, rediscover, ask, or refresh your memory about the basics of members' intrinsic motivators. What does the member seem to enjoy when participating in mission-related activities? Generally, is the member satisfied by altruizing, socializing, learning, or self-actualizing? Your ability as an AAUW leader and member to support engaged members will be much easier if you care about their culture and generational background. So I'm going to speak about this shortly. Cultural caring means understanding and appreciating each member's unique cultural background, values, and beliefs. Having each member share about their culture creates empathy, fosters an inclusive and equitable branch environment, and increases their and your ability as a leader to effectively and comfortably support members as they become more engaged and experienced with leadership. Cultural caring means simply asking the same cultural questions a historian might ask of that person. What makes your culture unique in history? What stereotypes or erroneous assumptions have you experienced? What stereotypes or assumptions do you have about people of other cultures? How has or does your cultural background impact your life, your values, your hobbies, music, dance, food, dress, school, work, family, daily activities, socially and psychologically? How have cultural language differences impacted your life? What language or communication challenges have you experienced in your life? What type of communication do you prefer? Encourage interest groups or use circles of engagement to give members opportunities to share and learn the cultural impacts that make up each of our emotional being as members. Ask members about the uniqueness of their culture. Show curiosity and appreciation of those differences and find similarities. AAUW branches can be a safe haven for members to share deeply with each other and build lasting friendships, inspiring them to return, engage, and lead. The five-star program is another way to stimulate ideas for creating a branch environment of cultural caring and support. We're just talking about the five-star program. This year, Salem Branch began honoring Oregon women of diverse backgrounds. During Women's History Month and Oregon Black and Asian History Month, we created attractive educational and historical pieces using constant contact, sending them out to all members as part of DEI awareness. One piece announced a branch Japanese program led by a new member of Japanese descent. For the last few years, Salem Branch has made a concerted effort to collaborate and participate in community culture celebration programs like World Beat Festival and Salem Speaks. This year, a member of Ukraine descent organized a community of Ukraine cultural event with music and food. Two of our own members shared personal stories. One of her son's experiences fighting with the Ukrainians, another growing up in Moscow. These programs were done outside of the branch, in the community. Branch members offered to help NAACP with their upcoming Juneteenth celebration. We learned, just like AAUW, the NAACP needs help with their community equity events. Our offer of help was most appreciated, and instead of talking about them, we'll be joining them in a cause we share. One of our members is a Black young woman. She has not been involved in any organizations in Salem. She doesn't know them. This will be an opportunity for her. Members of the World Beat Festival and NAACP allow us to wear our t-shirts, our AAUW teachers, and distribute AAUW flyers. At last year's World Beat Festival, the Japanese woman who arranged our May Japanese program became interested in AAUW and joined our branch. She is now going to take on a leadership position, and we are ready to support her because we understand her. We understand her culture. Reaching out and offering to join our sisters with their community activities while advocating for a vision of equity helps us fulfill our missions together. Attracting diverse members is secondary, but we are confident that it's going to happen just naturally as we get to know and work with each other. As with cultural caring, generational caring begins with sharing and ends with empathy. Generational identity is grounded in traits and presences that occur in high frequency within a given group. General traits listed on this slide may or may not fit each individual personally, but the psychological and social traits and values of people are, like cultural differences, usually a real mix and sometimes seem at odds with each other. But these are general ways of the general traits that most groups are coming up with for the different generations. The values of youngsters and oldsters are shaped by the same categorical influences we, as boomers, experienced in our growing up years. Just think of it. The categories are the same. Social expectations, educational opportunities, technological growth, health, safety, economic welfare, physical and mental well-being, our parents and our own work experience, and political influences of the time. As with cultural awareness, members might find experience of youngsters to be jarringly different, and we might discover that our general knowledge of youngsters might actually be an unintended bias to overcome. Encourage interest groups, just like with culture, to use circles of engagement, to give members opportunities to share and learn how generational experiences impact a member's emotional being. As with cultural caring, generational caring begins by asking the same questions. Getting to know you. What social influences did you grow up with? What were your hobbies, educational opportunities, and challenges did you face? What ways and types of communications have you experienced in your lifetime? This is a good one. What are your communication preferences? How did health issues, the pandemic, for instance, affect your social work, family, and social life? What are your work and family values? How are they different from your parents? And how did or will you raise your children differently than your parents raised you? How did you feel about your future growing up? How do you feel now about your hopes for the future, work, family, socially? For AAUW, what do you hope to gain? Learning the impact of each member's generational experience is just another way leaders can build and facilitate relationships and more effectively and more comfortably support members. There was a good article published this year in The Atlantic titled, "Young People Want to Change the World. Nonprofits Can Help Them." The Atlantic article states, and I quote, "While a majority of young people say they wish they could do more to help, according to a report from DoSomething.org, 42% of them say they don't know how to get started," unquote. Since young people in general are quite community-minded and socially conscious, it stands to reason that some of them could find a home with AAUW. Lately, we have met some of these young women while demonstrating in our community for a variety of education and equity causes while carrying our AAUW signs. Yes, we are mingling with them. Yes, we are showing we are up to date and part of what's going on now. In the past, we have had success reaching out to women's groups on college campuses. Why not try reaching out to help women's groups on campuses with an AAUW mission-related activity they are currently planning? It's an opportunity to mingle and gently acquaint them with AAUW as well to give them some help. AAUW Salem Branch has recently reached out to Oregon State University and Chemeketa Community College and learned volunteer organizations can actually apply to offer non-paid volunteer opportunities to students in person and online for growth in leadership. The idea of possibly offering a public policy chair is in the exploratory stage. A college student volunteer could become a member for free. Yes, a member would need to be there as a mentor, but this is what we're thinking. We're thinking that maybe this might be a way to help us with a leadership position, to provide growth opportunities for young women and keep our branches alive at the same time. By reaching out and mingling with younger women, leaders can more comfortably and effectively support those who become members. In this slide, I would like to introduce you to Toby Johnson. She's the president of Toby Johnson and Associates, and she gave us permission to share her summation of new research she found debunking myths about volunteers of all ages. And I would say of all cultures. What matters to volunteers is a well-run organization or activity, mutual respect, challenging work that's meaningful and makes a difference, short-term micro-volunteering opportunities, choices and control, support and training, knowing where they stand, when they're doing well, and how to do better. When offering support, don't hesitate to be assertive in assessing their satisfaction and comfort level. Listen, then act quickly to make member-specific volunteer needs satisfaction changes. Supporting each member to sustain interest, engagement, renewal is a challenge in the short run, not to mention the long run. AAUW leaders and longtime members want a magic formula we can apply now. So young members will quickly grow into a beautiful branch of engaged, energetic, and committed members who make sustaining AAUW a priority and become leaders. I really do wish I could provide you with that magic formula. But like Jerry Scott and Jim Morgman illustrated in this Zitz cartoon, there are many distractions that are barriers to a quick fix. Not to mention, most people do not like change, no matter what generation they're in. Another reality is women, young and old alike, are developing short-term attention spans and are more impatient. We want results and reward instantly. Sometimes it seems volunteer organizations are in competition with iPhones and social media for women we believe could find so much satisfaction and joy in being an AAUW member. So, anytime an engaged member does choose to show up, it's very important to support and touch their heart to better ensure they'll enjoy us on a longer date rather than sitting alone on the couch or taking a warm bath, although a warm bath is quite the competition. Circling back around to connect, volunteers first, leaders take time while they themselves are engaging as a speaker or with a group to observe each member. Confirm for yourself that the member is actually connected to or matched with activities that are aligned with their interests. Are they engaging with others or just sitting quietly off alone? Are they smiling or frowning? Do they stay until the end or leave early? Your observations can be used as conversation starters when touching bases with members, which is the next support step. Touching base is the single most critical, proactive, and effective support measure a leader can take to sustain a member's passion for volunteering. Touching base means slowing down enough to make time to chat with each engaged member in person, over the phone, or by Zoom. Schedule one-on-one chats when there's plenty of time to talk. Ask, how's it going? And for more in-depth conversation, express your sincere positive appreciation for the members' participation and any recent special contributions. Let the member know their serving is what matters, not how much time is served. Ask about satisfaction and fulfillment. Discuss dissatisfaction and any fulfillment barriers. Ask for feedback and suggestions, and offer alternative ways to serve. Better yet, encourage creative thinking for new ideas, programs, planning, and implementation. Growing leaders is usually a slow process of building and facilitating relationships. Growing leaders begins while supporting their engagement, not when you're getting to know someone or connecting them to activities of their interest. Prioritize your leadership development energy. Along the way, assess which engaged members appear to enjoy leadership. Assess whether or not an interested potential leader has the heart for caring, connecting, and supporting others. Spend your time and energy developing and elevating those engaged members who have the interest and ability and time to be leaders, and most importantly, who care about others. Leaders of volunteers must be able to reach out to members and genuinely care about them. Leadership positions are best left vacant rather than being filled with members who have no time or interest in leading or the heart for doing so. Empower newly engaged members to be AAUW leaders. Effective leaders create opportunities for members to take a small lead. Start by creating many small, doable lead roles with small teams for leading or co-leading activities of their interest. Create many opportunities for member volunteers to share in branch roles, programs, and active decision makings when they're interested. Then allow member volunteers to own implementation of their mission-related suggestions. No time for hovering here. Effective leaders make opportunities for leadership. Sometimes it's good to just bow out of a long-held position, create a vacancy, and give others an opportunity to step up. It may be slow that they do so, but it may happen. My rule of thumb is say how long you'll stay in a leadership position the day you assume that responsibility. For me, it's 3 to 4 years at the most, and never in the same role twice. Empower and challenge all AAUW members to be AAUW sustainers. Periodically, ask members to brainstorm how they can personally commit to help sustain the AAUW mission and values and activities by keeping them alive in the community. These are excellent topics for circles of engagement. What is needed to make that happen for each? What areas can members focus on to increase participation, lead an activity, engage in advocacy, scholarships, sponsorships, fundraising, branch leaderships? What can they do to keep the mission alive? The fourth way leaders can build and facilitate relationships, as well as help bond them to the AAUW mission and to the organization's sustainability, is to recognize members' contributions. Barry Altland, author of Engaging the Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers, is here to share a favorite and most important topic of his, rethinking volunteer recognition. So, Barry, I turn this over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing right here.
Okay, do we have any other questions? No? Well, thank you all for sticking with us for an hour and a half this evening. Thank you so much to Barry and Peggy for the presentations this evening, and Sharon for leading our question and answer, and all of you for participating tonight. Have a good evening. Good night.